Welcome on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. Apologies if you've looked at the two videos that we've tried to do last night. Tried to record Mass but couldn't get any sound. Not sure why, but anyway. And hopefully there's some sound on this. Feast of the Immaculate Conception is a great feast of the Church. It celebrates really the fullness, absolute and utter fullness of God's love for us. The first reading is the story of Adam and Eve and the fall. Basically, Adam and Eve live in the Garden of Eden. They've been told they can do whatever they want except eat from the tree in the middle of the garden, and of course they do that. God comes and first of all questions Eve, "What have you done?" And she blames Adam. Questions Adam, and Adam blames Eve. She gave me the fruit. It was her fault. So God questions Eve. "Why did you do this?" "It was the serpent's fault. He tempted me." It's a blame game. It wasn't me. It was somebody else. In a sense, the doctrine of original sin is a doctrine of somebody else's sin. We are born into the world with the capacity to do evil because we have free will. It's what separates us from the animals. We can choose right from wrong. And our first parents made the wrong choice or made a wrong choice. And humanity ever since has had that ability to make the wrong choice. And sadly, we do. So original sin is, in a sense, somebody else's sin. Somebody else who has passed on to us that capacity to sin. But as well as thinking about, or should I say the opposite of that, is the fact that Jesus came into the world to take the blame onto himself, to assume our sin. The sinless one became sin. So that just as our ancestors passed on sin to us, so Jesus passes on forgiveness. That happened at his death and resurrection. The Immaculate Conception tells us that Mary received the grace of redemption, the grace of the freedom of original sin, which we get at our baptism. She received that before even Jesus suffered on the cross. In a sense, she is taken out of time. She achieves about 50 years before it happens the benefit of the forgiveness of original sin, of God's love and redemption. It's a little bit, perhaps just a little bit, like a jigsaw puzzle. I'm not really that keen on jigsaws, although a couple of times I've been somewhat embarrassed by jigsaws because I have one that's already been completed, hangs on the wall. It's a 1,000 piece of the the beyond the solar system. It's got lots and lots of bits of light and so on, stars and galaxies and everything. And I bought that myself, knowing that I would never ever be able to do it. I got my sister to do it for me. And I remember doing a First Communion program with some 9-year-olds, and it was in the house, and one of them looked at the picture and said, "Oh, I've got that. I do it sometimes." And I thought, here you have a 9-year-old who's done it sometimes, so he must have done it at least when he was 8, if not even 7. Another is at a funeral recently, and the person who died was very keen on jigsaws, and I happened to mention that the most complicated jigsaw I'd seen was of a crossword, and a crossword that hadn't been filled in, and it was back to back. It was exactly the same on the reverse side, but at 90 degrees. Now I have absolutely no idea how that is possible to do that. But as I was saying this, the family in the front row were nodding their head, and then one of them said, "Oh, he used to do that one." How on earth people do them, I have no idea. But that's an aside. The one thing I do know about jigsaws is it's a big help if you got the picture beforehand. It's a big help if you get the four corners and then get the end pieces, the edge pieces, and then try and sort of match colors or whatever elsewhere. But you have to have that start. For most of us, well, for all of us, when we are born, our journey of faith begins at our baptism. It's then that we're given the picture of our life, picture of our relationship with God. Hopefully, our parents give us the four corners, our teachers, people that we get to know in life, help us with the edges. And then in various other ways, we learn to put the whole picture together. And then when our life in this world has come to an end, when we die, we come into God's presence and we will achieve the fullness of grace. The final piece will be put into the jigsaw. When we celebrate or think about the Immaculate Conception, we think about the fact that at the moment of Mary's conception, her relationship with God was already mapped out. The picture was already there, the picture that we would only get when we are baptized. The four corners were put in place by her parents, and she very quickly built up that picture so that when one very important piece came along, the Annunciation, when she was asked to be the mother of Jesus, she was able to find the right place for that piece. Place, if you like, in her heart, a heart of love for God. And the doctrine of the Assumption tells us that her picture is complete, that she has the fullness of God's love, the fullness of being in God's presence. She is the archetypal human being. She was the first to be free from original sin. She was the first to have the fullness of being in the presence of God. In that sense, she is the Queen of Heaven, the number one citizen of heaven. But everything that happened to Mary happens to us, just in a different time scale. We are baptized, we are set free from original sin, and one day we shall be in the fullness of God's presence. When we pray the Rosary, the final decade is Our Lady, Queen of Heaven, and the glory of all the saints. It's not just about Mary. It's about the fact that Mary is the first of all creation, but the glory of all the saints is what awaits us. We too will share in that glory. Today's Feast of the Immaculate Conception is the beginning of that story. Mary being born without original sin. The picture of her journey of faith is established at the very, very beginning. And it has been fulfilled. It has been completed. Our journey began on the day of our baptism, and our journey will be completed when we too come into the glory of heaven, the end of time. So thank you very much, and have a great day.